do better and you don't care, and I won't play alone. I got you in my sight. I keep all the words you said to me. I get you, get you, get you, get you on your knees. Rewrite all the things you said that I should be. I'll get you, get you, get you. Now you beg me, please. Hey.
Hey, everybody. Put a one in the chat if you can hear me, OG Mod. Hey, Clerk Jim Clown. Good to see you. Anyone who is watching, peeping in the back, go ahead and hit that like button. Put something in the chat. You never know. Nania7. Hey, welcome in. Now, I'm not in the algorithm of Karen Reed very well. I don't jive. And so there's not going to be probably a lot of people here, but that's okay. If you're watching the replay, I appreciate you being here. Just hit that like button and share this video, because we are going to go over some pretty interesting stuff with Sir Brian Albert in the Karen Reed case. Hey, Morrissey's iCloud. That is awesome. Love it. I suffer from the old allergies, so excuse me for sounding nasally, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. All right, guess what you're going to get today? You're going to get Eve live in the flesh. Camera's working, things are jiving. So excited. Took me all damn day to get my face on my live, so hopefully it works out. Looks to be working. So what are we going to do? So in Karen Reed's trial, which we all know is a mistrial and is a sham of a trial, in my opinion, there was a specific part in the closing arguments where I saw Brian Albert in a very small window of my YouTube live, the YouTube live of the trial coverage. And I was like, oh man, I want to see his face, because I know that, you know, specifically Alan Jackson in the closing argument, he might have some feelings about what Jackson is alleging him of doing in the Karen to John O'Keefe. And so I started looking and zooming in onto Brian Albert's face, and the man is very animated, and I feel like we could learn something from what he reacts to when Alan Jackson says certain things. And not a lot of people really knew that his face was in one of the lives, the live streams. I think Law and Crime did it, and that other crappy one, WBZ. But thank you, Gmail. I'm going to make sure my chat's working today, because I know y'all are going to have some questions. You jive with the real ones. Thank you. I think I do. No, I know I do, but thank you. All right. So I'm going to start the closing arguments live. We're just going to jump right into it because I don't have a lot of time. And we're only going to do Alan Jackson's closing argument, not Lally. Thank God. No one can barely tolerate it. So, especially me. So let me pull it up. Give me a second. No objections, please. So I'm going to try to zoom in onto his face. I might have to add like another screen capture source in my desktop Streamlabs. So be patient with me if I can't get it to zoom. All right.
So we'll let them do that. When I was
can barely hear that.
Lawyer, I tried a lot of cases in this courtroom. The thing I liked least
Can y'all
about the
hear
trial
that?
was just before I stood up to give my closing argument, the judge would say,
Sorry.
Remember, closing arguments are not evidence, but it's true.
Sound good?
So because of that, you have to put your notebooks away. All right, so if you just put your notebooks away and just listen, And though the closing arguments are not evidence,
Okay, good.
they're certainly a very important part of the case. And
David's.
you've all seen how hard the lawyers have worked for this long period of time. And we've all noticed that
The Commonwealth's entire.
the Commonwealth has the burden of proof. The Commonwealth goes last. So we will hear now.
All right, so here's obviously Brian Albert and Jennifer McCabe, the How Song to Die in Cold at or before 227 Google searcher that we all have come to love just so much to hate on. And of course, you have Paul O'Keefe, John O'Keefe's brother, Aaron, his wife, yada, yada, yada. These people right here are going to be pretty much in the screen, but I want you to focus on Brian only. And the reason why is because he doesn't really hold back his facial expressions at all. It's very telling to me. I mean, I'm no behavioral analyst professional, but I'm a human being who is also very animated, just as you're seeing right now. Everything that I say, if it's snarky, you're going to see it on my face. And it seems like Brian Albert internalizes it and then it leaks out onto his face. And we're going to see that here shortly, all right? Hey, Matthew, what you damning for? How you doing, love? Good to see you. All right. Matthew, are you a guru in VLC Player? Perhaps. I want to zoom in on this fool's face. There it is. Never mind. I don't need you. I don't need you. Oh, maybe I do. I'm lying. Aspect ratio. I'm just going to start clicking. I was supposed to figure this out before I started my life. So hold on. Well, you have peepers. You can do it yourself. Zoom in on your phone or whatever. But again, focus on this dude right here, Brian Albert, and his facial expressions, especially my OG mod Gmail, because we're going to talk about this. Hey, Shani. Good to see you. All right, let's get it started. Let's just go.
Now from Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Look the other way. Look the other way. 4 words that sum up the Commonwealth's entire case. 4 words that sum up the hopes of those who have tried to deceive you. Conflicts of interest? Doesn't matter. Just look the other way. Magic hairs, magic glass. Look the other way. Late night calls and Google searches, falsified affidavits, inverted videos, and butt dials galore. Just look the other way. That's what they want. That's what they're counting on, but the uncontrovertible fact is you have been lied to in this courtroom. And your job is to make sure you don't ever look the other way. Your singular duty is to stare down the evidence and do it unflinchingly and do it unwaveringly.
Ooh, he did not like that. He did not. Did you see that? He gave his little sassy side eye like, keep on speaking the truth. I'm all powerful Brian Albert. I can do what I want, say what I want. They're not going to believe you because, especially the foreman, perhaps, maybe. Yeah, he didn't like that. He didn't like the start of this closing argument for sure. He looks over at the jury. Oh, God. You know, him and Jennifer McCabe. Jennifer McCabe stares at I would assume, the foreman or a specific juror or jurors, and she just stares at him. looking all crazy. And then Brian Albert also does that to Karen Reed. It's very obvious that these people are not self-aware. Because if you're going to be in the court on a very important day where you do not want to, you want to be on your best behavior and look innocent as fuck because you're the third party culprits, they failed, in my opinion. Horrible. And you're about to see it. Let's continue.
You see, you're the only thing standing between Karen Reed and the tyranny of injustice. It's a job you didn't ask for, probably a job you didn't want. But it's the greatest responsibility we have as citizens here in America. Lest the government stop answering to us and we start answering to the government. And woe betide any one of us who might find ourselves in the crosshairs of a Michael Proctor. Preparing for today, I was reminded of a quote. It's a quote about the truth.
God, you're so sassy over
I'll
there.
share it with you. It is of great importance to set a resolution never to tell an untruth. There is no vice so mean, so pitiful, so contemptible, and those who permit themselves to tell a lie once find it much easier to do it a second time and a third. This falsehood of the tongue leads to that of the heart, and in time...
Ooh, it just started, and look, he's like, I'm ready to fuck you up. I hope that was not the face that John O'Keefe last saw in his final moments. I hope it was better than that. Because that's a rough one. And I feel for him in that way. Like, that's the biggest thing about this case, that John O'Keefe's last few hours of life were horrible. If you think about it, if you believe what I believe, that one of these fuckers, Brian Albert or Hagee, or maybe even Colin, which I highly doubt personally, beat John O'Keefe to a point where he didn't die immediately because of the 80-degree body temperature. So he didn't die immediately, in my opinion. Probably threw up on himself because of the brain damage from getting blows to the back of the head. He suffered in some way, had to have, for him not to die immediately or for it to prolong from 12/24 onward. We don't know exactly what happened, but I feel like he, it wasn't an immediate thing, and it's horrible. So for these people to act the way they do, it just blows my mind, honestly. Really does. To be so cold and callous. I don't get it. How could you do that? Did somebody not spank you enough when you were, what happened? Hey, Jenny from the block. Morrissey's Cloud, iCloud. Turn the phone sideways, friends, and pinch your screen. You will see him good. Yeah, thank you guys. Once I figure it out, I'm searching it right now. Then I will fix it.
It depraves all its good dispositions. What does that mean? It means that it's been observed that to tell an untruth, to exaggerate, to make a false claim, it's a cancer. One lie begets another, and it's a malignancy that grows over time. And that, folks, is how a cover-up is born. That's how a Massachusetts state trooper says in whispered tones to his friends when he thought no one was looking or listening, how he would make a case, how he would make it cut and dry, no matter the truth, how he would make sure to put, quote, serious charges on the girl. In other words, pin it on the girl.
He goes, mm-hmm.
You may ask yourself, how does this happen? How could this
Let's
happen?
play that again. He goes, he nods very slightly. Like, yeah, mm-hmm. Sure enough.
You may ask yourself, how does this happen? How could this happen? It's 2024. Surely people aren't going to come to this courtroom, this hall of justice, and lie to us, just give us false information. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't try to cover up the truth. The Alberts, the McCabe's, Higgins, Lank, Michael Proctor, Yuri Buchanan, Brian Tully. You don't have to wonder if they would lie to support their narrative. You need only wonder how many times they did lie. over and over and over. They and others were caught deceiving you. Big things, small things, it didn't really matter. They feared nothing. They'll look you in the eye and deny phone calls. They'll deny secret meetings. They'll claim that calls are butt dials and butt dials are answered. They'll show you a video and tell you left is right and right is left. They'll magically turn 3 pieces of plastic into 5 right before your eyes. And even when they're caught with their own lies, they won't blink, they don't sweat. They'll just look you in the eye and demand, pay no attention. You folks look the other way. Ladies and gentlemen, there was a cover-up.
Ooh, did you see that? I want to rewind that just a smidge. Indignant motherfucker.
Ladies and gentlemen, there was a cover-up in this case, plain and simple. You'll surely say to yourself, I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe that could happen in our community. But sadly, over the past 8 weeks, you've seen it right before your eyes. So how does a cover-up happen? How could that happen?
Look, I know the Colombian Bam Bam is very popular in Massachusetts, and I am not slighting anyone with struggling with addiction or anything, but the amount of times this man moves in a second is insane. Sit still, sir. Do you need to put your hands under your butt like when we were children? Like, why are you moving so much? I understand you're getting called out for the skis you are, murderer allegedly that you are, but simmer down, eat a moon pie, chill out, or just not be there. That'd be great too.
Let's count the ways, shall we? Handpick your investigator. Make sure it's someone we know, someone on our side. Keep him close. Offer him help. Offer him a gift. Have secret friends and family meetings. Get your story straight. Delete your call history. Make mysterious phone calls at 2:22 a.m. Delete Google searches. Monitor police activity. Get rid of evidence. Get rid of your dog. Destroy your phones. Destroy your SIM card. For the investigator, decide on a narrative early on. Don't go to the crime scene. Don't take witnesses in for questioning. Question all the witnesses together. Ignore witnesses who don't fit your narrative. Allow friends and family to contact those same witnesses. Don't record interviews. Write vague and false police reports. Omit witnesses' names. Omit witnesses' interviews altogether. Don't photograph the evidence. Don't conduct any forensics. Don't document the evidence. Don't document the logs. Don't create any logs whatsoever, and don't maintain a chain of custody.
Look at that side eye. Would you shut the fuck up? That's what he's thinking. He got all of that corruption in one sentence. That must be painful. Very irritating.
Keep all the evidence in the hands of one person and then manipulate that evidence, including videos. Don't turn over videos. Invert videos. Turn 4:16 p.m. into 5:30 p.m. in affidavits. Turn 3 pieces of taillight into 5 pieces of taillight. Delete 42 minutes of surveillance footage. Hide personal relationships. Make this case cut and dry and ensure the homeowner, quote, never sees any shit because he's a Boston cop. But most importantly, pick your patsy and pin it on the girl. It's not that it could happen. It's that every single one of those things I just mentioned did happen right in front of you. But this sort of injustice can't happen in a vacuum. So what about the prosecution? What about the...
Okay, so again, I am not a behavioral analyst, but I have read a lot of studies, especially in college, and Home Dude is doing what I believe it to be anxiety spill out, where in your brain, there's a lot of things firing and going on. He's remembering things and hearing a lot of triggering events that he knows damn well the truth about. And So when it's overwhelming, which just imagine you being a piece of shit murderer, pinning it on a innocent woman. Just imagine it for a second. And all of these triggering events are in your mind and you're trying to hold back probably anger, tears, whatever, rage. And the neurons are firing, but there's nowhere else for them to go when you're overwhelmed. So they spill out into the tendons in your face because it's the closest thing to your brain. So the neurons are going and they're spilling out into your muscles and tendons and they keep moving. And I think that that's what's going on with him. He's so overwhelmed that he can't sit still. So he has to, or he's on the Colombian Bam Bam or something. Something's going on. But I have an inkling it's overwhelming anxiety and anger for being called out, as he deserves, in my opinion.
Commonwealth. What does it look like when the government picks a narrative and then tries to form a prosecution around the narrative instead of the other way around? Looks a lot like this. If you don't have actual evidence, just throw every single thing you can against the wall to see what sticks. Drag her through the mud and make sure you attack her character. And that's what you saw in this case. The Commonwealth spent much of their time and resources trying to vilify Karen Read. They desperately resorted to calling witnesses to talk about Karen Read and John O'Keefe's arguments. They even stooped so low as to call the children and put them through this ordeal. All to say that John sometimes got upset because Karen was too kind, too nice, spoiled them too much. Their arguments illustrated what anybody could imagine is a normal set of ups and downs for any couple. Even on January 28th, they talked it out, they communicated, they worked out their issues, and they had a nice, affectionate evening out with their friends. And you don't have to take my word for it. Pull the tape, as they say. Look at the videos. C.F. McCarthy, Waterfall. What are the words that every single person who testified in this case used about Karen Read and John O'Keefe that night? Getting along, no issues, good mood, happy, affectionate.
Hold on, I figured it out sort of by just randomly clicking on shit. So hold on a second. So I'm going to use the sidebar. This is so cool. Did y'all know? Oh shit. This is kind of cool. Sorry, y'all. Hold on. Give me just a second. Did y'all know about this in VLC Player? I didn't know it could do all this kind of stuff. I did not. I don't want to rotate it. One sec. Oh, hear it? Boom. Man. My mom's going to be so proud of me. All right. All right, here we go.
Even lovey-dovey. No issues, no toxicity. They were a loving couple right up until the time Karen Read dropped him off and he walked into 34 Fairview. If an argument with a loved one is a motive for murder, folks, we're all in trouble. Speaking of which, what is the evidence that John went into the house? The Commonwealth will tell you, undoubtedly, no, he never went in the house. And they'll point to certain witnesses who they say didn't see him go in. Well, the question you have to ask yourself is, can you rely on that? First, there are these.
No, Mr. Jackson, with the beard, looking good these days. No, you can't. And look at his face real quick, though. He is upset about what he just said.
In the house, and they'll point to certain witnesses who they say didn't see him go in. Well, the question you have to ask yourself is, can you rely on that? First, these are all people who are related to or committed to the Alberts in some way or another. That all-powerful Canton family, it's easy to say, I didn't see something, because how can that really be challenged? Some actually may not have seen John walk into the house. They were in the kitchen, as you recall, from Nicole. Third, at least one witness, Brian Higgins, forgot his narrative, at least for a second, and he admitted a man did, in fact, come into the house. And then when he was caught and asked to describe that man, he had to. It was a little bit vague, but you remember what he said. He was tall with dark hair. That was a telling slip of the tongue by Brian Higgins. But what's the real evidence of the unbiased data, the data that's not connected to the Albert family? How about John?
Ooh, he's seething. Damn you, Brian Higgins, in your mouth. Yeah, obviously I don't do a Boston accent well at all. Yeah, I'm from Texas. But if he were a Texan, he'd be like, gosh darn it, you son of a gun. I'm gonna kill you. You know, he's pissed. He's ready to get the hell out of Dodge. That's what he needs to do. Should have never been there, in my opinion. But hey, you know, I get it. On the other hand, if you were being accused of murdering someone and you were actually innocent, you'd want to show up and, I guess, intimidate some jurors. I don't know. Perhaps.
John's Apple Health data. It shows that at 12:21 a.m., an important time, John arrived. That's established by the monotonic time clock that you heard about in this trial that was on his phone, and that represents a huge problem for the Commonwealth. It shows that he took 80 steps and ascended or descended 3 flights of stairs at that time. And that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? It matches. Walks into the house, goes directly to the basement. There's your 80 steps and your descending flights of stairs. The big problem for the Commonwealth is he wasn't outside at the car ascending and descending stairs, wasn't climbing on top of the car. So they'll tell you, wait, don't look at the Apple Health data, look at this other thing called Waze. But Rick Green explained that if you apply the 3-minute offset that is built into that monatomic time, it aligns perfectly. They don't want you to see that. They don't want you to pay attention. They want you to look the other way. But even more importantly, at approximately 12:32 a.m., someone holding John's phone takes another 36 steps and travels 25 meters. Why is that so important? Because by 12:32 a.m., Karen Reed was gone.
How are you going to roll your eyes, sir? Where do you get your nerve to roll your eyes like that? Like it didn't happen. Data Claus, a.k.a. Rick Green, showed everyone that that's the truth. How are you going to roll your eyes like that? You know it's the truth. Maybe that's why he's rolling his eyes. That up with the truth.
Someone holding John's phone takes another 36 steps and travels 25 meters. Why is that so important? Because by 12:32 a.m., Karen Reed was gone. She had already left the location. She left at 12:30. Trooper Garino told you that Karen Reed's phone connected to John's Wi-Fi at what time? 12:36. It is undisputed in this case that it's a 6-minute drive on a good day from 34 Fairview over to One Meadows. She was gone.
His world is crumbling.
And John's phone was taking 36 steps and logging 25 meters at 12:32 after she'd left. So don't be fooled. John walked into that house, after which Karen drove away, and the scientific data all prove it. But also, Ryan Nagel and Heather Maxson.
I agree, armchair.
In addition to the Apple Health data, Ryan and Heather both independently testified that they passed Karen's SUV as they drove away after talking to Julie. And Karen was alone in the SUV. John was not with her. He wasn't in the car. He wasn't standing outside the car. He wasn't sitting beside the car. He wasn't laying on the ground beside the car. He was nowhere in sight. There's only one other place that John could have been, and that's in the house. Exactly where the Apple
house
places it. So it all fits. And Ryan was right behind her, remember, staring at her taillights, undamaged, brightly lit. That brings up another difficulty for the Commonwealth, and that's their star witness, Jennifer McCabe. You'll recall that Jennifer McCabe claimed that she was looking out the door, staring at that SUV over and over and over again from 12:29 to 12:50. She was very specific about that time frame. But we know that the SUV was gone from 34 Fairview by about 12:30. Had to be in order to connect to the Wi-Fi at 12:36. So unequivocally, Jennifer McCabe was lying about watching that SUV, and it makes you wonder why.
He's trying to like wipe his fake eye boogers away or something, because I believe that when you get so overwhelmed to the point where you're just tired of hearing it and you disassociate, you just start to mess. I do this. Okay, guys, I do this. I have mental health, not issues. I don't call them issues. I just call them obstacles. And when I get to a point of disassociation, I'll start to do anything, touch eyes, whatever it takes to just not hear what I'm hearing. And he's starting to, and then you're going to see that he snaps right back into reality when he starts talking about very specific details of that day, of that night.
And to add to that deceit, she was also blatantly lying about the calls to John's phone. You remember that colloquy back and forth. She said that every single one of those calls to John's phone during that time was a butt dial. How are those
Dan,
lines
those booty
connected?
cheeks.
And why are they connected?
Everybody in Canton has problems with their booty cheeks hitting a iPhone, unlocking it, and calling somebody, especially during fun time with the wives. That man right there on your screen. Yeah. Y'all gotta get better than that. It's inappropriate behavior.
Jennifer McCabe knows. Was she butt dialing John over and over? Or was someone looking for John's phone that went missing? Let's talk for a second about what actually happened in the time leading up to everyone going to 34 Fairview.
He pursed his
Brian
lips.
Albert,
Look,
Brian Higgins show up drunk at the
that bothered him. Look at him. He is laser focused now. He just snapped back into reality. Okay. This, I believe Alan Jackson nails it. And I think it triggers Brian Albert into this mess that you're about to see before you, even more so. All right, let's just rewind that just a wee bit.
actually happened in the time leading up to everyone going to 34 Fairview. Brian Albert, Brian Higgins show up drunk at the waterfall. They had been drinking in the afternoon. You know about the flirtatious texts that were sent between Karen Reed and Brian. Higgins was clearly pining over Karen, but for her, the flirtation had ran its course. It was done. She was happy and committed to John. You could see that in her actions with John that night. You don't have to guess. Brian Higgins, however, you can see in his actions, he wasn't quite so satisfied and he wasn't done. His text message, well, meaning, what the hell, Karen? What about me? Seemed aggressive, seemed annoyed. He didn't like being ignored. That was pretty clear. So he's 5 or 6 whiskeys deep into the night by this time.
Gotta get a cough
and
drop
she
now to
continued
focus.
to ignore him. Then oddly, Higgins, who doesn't know John all that well, seems to want to coax John to 34 Fairview. I draw your attention to the waterfall tape if you want to take another look at it. It's at the 11:57 mark, between 11:57 and 11:58. Take a look at that tape. He's just about to leave. Higgins is just about to leave. He points over at John and he motions for him. Come on, come with me. And then at 12:20, he texts him, you coming here? This is a person he doesn't really know and didn't really talk to that entire night. Ask yourself, why was Higgins so insistent that John go to 34 Fairview that night? And then there's that sparring and fighting that he and Brian Albert were engaged in. Of all the things they could be doing, this is what they were doing just minutes before John O'Keefe walked into that house at 34 Fairview. We know that once John actually did walk in the door, it's about 2 steps, 4 feet or so, 2 steps for an adult male to reach that basement door. Remember, everybody was gathered in the kitchen. That's what Nicole Albert said. And every single witness agreed that at some point, Brian Higgins and Brian Albert left the group and went to another room. Where did they go? Where did they go together?
He is looking like he's about to cry. Alan Jackson's nailing it. He is explaining, I feel, what Brian Albert is reliving in his head, and he's not shaking his head. He's not angry. He's upset. That looks like pain. I don't know about you, but I think it's pain. That's just me.
Another important point. Chloe was not upstairs. Brian Albert slipped in one of his testimony that he provided. Quote, I was watching Chloe downstairs, monitoring her because of the other people in the house. She's not good with strangers. Remember that testimony. So what happened next? We absolutely know that John was in the house. The data, Ryan, Heather, they all established that. We know that John ascended or descended stairs. We know that Brian Higgins and Brian Albert excused themselves. How long does it take to have a crossword? How long does it take to have a fight? How long would it take for Brian Higgins to say to John, you know, your girl's been texting me. A push, a punch.
And that's exactly what I think. Look at him. Yeah, you're right, punk ass. Yeah. That's, ooh, man. I can feel it from here. Like, he's triggered. Because that's the anger. That's the anger of both Brian Higgins and Brian Albert. That's what sparred this whole thing off with John O'Keefe. You know? And the audacity for them to say, well, she had 9 drinks and she was drunk before she left, when she states recently that she didn't believe she had any drinks. It's in one of the motions with the Gretchen Voss interview, that she didn't believe that she had anything to drink at the second bar, which is where they were all at. So, however, they had fireball shots from Chris Albert, Jameson and Ginges, beer. They were probably lit more than anyone else. Okay. And wait, wasn't there like a Jaeger? I heard something about a Jaeger shot, but that's just alleged. But damn, all of that after a funeral that the 2 Bryans went to for a fallen police officer, like, doesn't sound like it's a good mix, right? But he's triggered. For sure.
A fall, pull Chloe off his arm, and now it's done. What is that? 5 seconds? 10? Doesn't take long at all. And then the panic sets in. It wasn't intended to go that far, but what's done is done.
Wait a damn minute. Let me back up on that one right there. It made me feel like when he was having that inner dialogue with what he just said about 5 to 10 seconds, watch his face like, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly right. Because I'm the boss.
Doesn't take long at all. And then the panic sets in. It wasn't intended to go that far, but what's done is done. And then some very, very odd things start happening at the Albert household. Very odd indeed. What do we know? We know through the testimony and key swipes that Brian Higgins very oddly goes directly to Canton Police Department. Why would he do that? After a night of drinking and partying, why go to CPD when you're drunk? What was so important there? He couldn't even get his own story straight. First he said it was administrative work, then he said he was moving cars, then he said it was a factor of both. Is it both? Was it neither? Or was he there to gather intel? Ask yourself, why go? But the odd things keep piling up, and here's another.
He took a drink and then looked up and was like, wouldn't you like to know why? Wouldn't you just love to know why he went there? Sure, maybe some intel, but something else. Maybe a dog. You'll never know.
Chloe was the Albert family pet. Not only did she appear to be gone from the house that morning on January 29th,
And there's the, oh, shit. Jackson strikes again. He ain't got no quit.
nobody saw her there. Even Jen McCabe admitted, yeah, I didn't see her there. But they actually got rid of the dog altogether. Within months of this incident, the dog was gone, out of the house, rehomed, never to be seen again. This was a dog they had had for 7 years. Also a dog who had a bite history. Why was it so important to get rid of that dog? Was there something about the dog they did not want law enforcement to find out? Recall what Dr. Russell said. She's seen up to 1,000 animal attacks. In her expert opinion, John's right arm, those injuries are from an animal, quote, most likely a large dog. And Dr. Russell's testimony, I'll remind you, was
He nodded.
undisputed by any witness for the Commonwealth. But there are more odd and unexplained things. After a night of drinking and hanging out and partying, after being together for the entire day, at 2:22 a.m., Brian Albert decides to call Brian Higgins. That call was missed, but 17 seconds later, Higgins calls Brian back.
Ooh, look at big
and they
ol'
speak
butt
for
Albert.
22 seconds. Now that call is odd and suspicious enough in just in and of itself, the fact that the call was made. But what's even more incriminating is that both men, both of them, lied about the calls happening. They both claim astonishingly that those calls are, you probably say it with me, they're butt dials.
Butt dials.
Amazing.
Booty cheeks.
But Albert and Higgins take it a step further. Not only did they claim that they were making calls as butt dials, but they were answering calls as butt dials. And Higgins seemed
All right, I want to know something, Brian Higgy and Brian Albert. Was it the left cheek or the right? Did it answer? Which one hung up?
awfully defensive about that call, didn't he? Remember on cross-examination when I was asking him, can you have a conversation in 22 seconds? He unequivocally said, no, that's impossible. It's not reasonable. You can't do it. Well, let's test that out. Hey, did you make it over to Canton? Yep. Haven't been any calls. Nobody knows a thing. All right, don't talk to anybody until we talk again. Okay, fine. And by the way, come back over. I need help moving something heavy. How long did that take? 15.
Ooh, talk about lighting a fire up his ass on that one. Could you imagine? He's used to boxing things out, you know? He's used to dealing with things his way, and he has to sit there and take this closing argument. He's about to wiggle out of this courtroom. It's insane.
15 seconds, maybe. But the odd behavior isn't done yet. 5 minutes after that call that we just talked about, Jennifer McCabe is on her phone at her house, Google searching how long it takes for someone to die in the cold. That was at 2:27 a.m. That timeline seems to fit, doesn't it?
Looks like a nod.
A very telling and a very clear story. That search became a focal point of the Commonwealth's entire case. This case was starting to look a lot more like the defense of Jennifer McCabe than anything else. And that's probably because there is no innocent explanation for that Google search at 2:27 a.m. None. At the end of the day, clearing away all the confusion, the Commonwealth's experts were left with two things that are true. First, neither of their experts could absolutely rule out that Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m. Neither. And second, the only person to use the actual phone model, the actual data, and the actual precise operating system was Rick Green. And he was clear. That search was at or before 2:27 a.m. And then it was deleted.
You hear that, Jennifer? Miss Weeks, okay? AKA Jennifer McCabe. You did it. We know you did it. You could take your shock and shove it up your hora because you did it, girl. We know you did it. The feds know you did it. Brian Albert knows you did it. Hell, I think even everybody on this row knows you did it. I really do. So stop it. Stop it. Stop trying to get your minions to convince others that it didn't happen because they know it did. Everybody knows. Just know that everyone knows and just stop the cap.
So what else was going on at or around this same time when all this?
Sorry, somebody said something. Let me look at chat. He's a little scared to look at anyone in the audience, just in case anyone is watching him. Yeah, he's looking at everything but Alan Jackson, and I think he's looking at the jury, to be honest. I don't even think he's looking at anything. He's probably reliving shit in his head. I don't know. Back it up. So what part did he mouth fuck off? Do y'all know the timestamp?
That search became a
I don't.
focal point of the Commonwealth's entire case. This case was starting to look a lot more like the defense of Jennifer McCabe than anything else. And that's probably because there is no innocent explanation for that Google search at 2:27 a.m. None. At the end of the day, clearing away all the confusion, the Commonwealth.
Oh, well, to be fair, he is chewing on a cough drop. Maybe is that what y'all are talking about? Oh no, my webcam. Hold on. I gotta fix my. Does this sound better? I hope so. My mic went out. Sorry, guys. Can y'all hear me still?
Of the Commonwealth's experts were left
Can
with
you hear
two
me?
things that are true. First, neither of their experts could absolutely rule out that Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m. Neither. And second, the only person to use the actual phone model, the actual data, and the actual precise operating system was Rick Green. And he was clear. That search was at or before 2:27 a.m. And then it was deleted. So what else was going on at or around this same time when all this suspicious activity was happening at the Albert House and the McCabe's? 3 minutes after that search and 8 minutes after the Albert Higgins 2:22 a.m. call, Brian Loughran drives down the street in his snowplow. And he told you that there is no body laying on the lawn at 34 Fairview at 2:30 in the morning. Importantly, he didn't just simply say he didn't see a body, he wasn't paying attention. He said there was no body there. He knows the property, he knows the owners, he's grown up with these folks, he passes by all the time, not once, not twice, 3 passes. There was no body on that lawn.
No
Period.
body.
At 2:30 a.m.
Sorry.
And what other suspicious thing happened that night? By 3:30 a.m., someone moved a Ford Edge in front of the very area that would obstruct the view of where John's body would ultimately be discovered. Who's the only person in this case that you've heard about with a Ford Edge? Brian Albert. Remember, as you're thinking about this, the basement.
Look at him looking down. He's like, yeah, I know. It was me.
Fairview is serviced by a bulkhead. It's a quick and convenient door to the backyard. And that backyard is serviced by a side fence. And that side fence is easily accessible to the front yard at the side of the house. Which side of the house? The side where John's body was found. And by 6 a.m., John's body was, in fact, now outside. While this flurry of suspicious activity was going on with the Alberts and the McCabes, what's happening with Karen? All she knows at this point, think about it, at approximately 2:21, she dropped off John, he walked into 34 Fairview, and that's all she knows. She knows nothing else that was going on. So what was she left to think? He goes in to check the party out, But all of a sudden, he's not coming back. He's not responding. Minutes start to pass. 1 minute turns to 2, 2 turn to 10. Where is he? Why isn't he responding? She's sitting in the cold, dark, freezing outside in the car. Naturally, she's perturbed. Being perturbed turns into being peeved. Being peeved eventually turns into being pissed. By 12:30, Karen's mad. She's left 34 Fairview to make a point.
Best comment of the evening, Nani of 7. He's thinking that he created enough reasonable doubt to ever be convicted. I really think he thinks that. And I think Jennifer McCabe thinks that more than anybody because of how many people that she has implicated in her web of lies on social media. They really think they have this in the bag. I don't think so. And I think Hank Brennan is going to be the one that, and this is going to be controversial because everyone hates Hank Brennan. I could care less either way because Karen Read is innocent and the feds are going to prove that one day. But I think Hank Brennan is a plant of sorts that's going to help exonerate, vindicate Karen Read. So if they think that they got Hank Brennan on to help them, they are sadly mistaken, in my opinion.
But she's still texting and calling. What could she reasonably be thinking at this point? What's going through her mind? 12:33 turns into 12:34. I can't believe he'd do this to me. 12:34 turns into 12:35. Where is he? Why aren't you answering, John? 12:35 turns to 12:36. Jesus Christ. I'm calling and you're not answering. Where are you? Pick up the phone.
Look, he is triggered.
But there's still no answer. There's still no response. By 12:37, she's getting furious. She does not know that something has happened to John. She does not know that. So she leaves the first angry voicemail. Illustrates frustration, aggravation, all the normal responses anybody might have, you and I might have. But little did she know. The next open voicemail has Karen parking at John's garage after she gets home. You can hear her heels clicking across the garage floor. For all she knows at this point, John's just drunk, he's been partying, he's hanging out, just forgot about her.
Now, quick thought. If they were trying to find John O'Keefe's phone, and they eventually find it, right? Wouldn't they have seen the triggering event of Karen Read making it to the house? So what? The Wi-Fi triggers at 12:36 or connects, to Karen Read's phone as she's driving to John's house. What do they say that she arrives 2 minutes later, a minute later, something like that? So it's very interesting that around that time that right before she calls, Jennifer McCabe is saying, pull that behind me, all these bullshit ass text messages, and knowing that Karen Read is there for some reason. The only issue that I have with that is like, you would then already know that something happened to John and you're in immediate cover-up mode. So I struggle with that one, but I don't know. It's a theory, right? Did they have his phone and never lost it? And they were trying to make it seem like they were concerned that he hadn't showed up to the party yet. It's just those two things are like my theories. I don't think that the phone was ever lost, but Alan Jackson, the defense team does. I don't know.
Blowing her off. But John's still not responding, and as the minutes tick by, Karen becomes increasingly upset. Those are the voicemails that you heard. How could he do this? Why is he ignoring me? Why is he ignoring the kids? Those are the thoughts bearing down on Karen Read as she sat in an empty house late at night by herself. Ladies and gentlemen, she did not know.
I feel so bad for her right here.
To John.
Look at her breathing, that poor woman. I know that's not the perfect freeze frame. Sorry, Karen.
You
But
quickly learn what she was thinking.
she is, oh my God, you could feel like the anxiety of this. Poor thing.
And what she was feeling. Now it's 5:23 a.m. She's woken up. She's realized that he hasn't come home and he hasn't responded to a single text, not a single call. And anger quickly turns to panic and abject fear. She's so distraught, she reaches out to him again. John, where the fuck are you? She says through tears
That's
and
pain.
desperation.
That's pain. And it's very similar to that small blip in time of the 1236, that was mentioned that Brian Albert looked down like regretful.
And at 6:03, her question was answered and her worst fears were realized when she finds his body laying, dying in the cold in Brian Albert's front yard. You heard her. You can feel the...
I'm sorry, armchair investigator. I meant that when Karen called John, not Jen. I apologize.
grief. You can feel the raw anguish. You could see it. You don't have to wonder the emotional journey that Karen traveled that night. You can see it in the video. You can hear it in the audio. From the time he left her and walked into 34 Fairview and she called, she reached out 53 times. She called him 53 times before finding his body. Think about that. The Commonwealth wants you to believe that she murdered this man. And then after that murder, she called him not once, not twice, 53 times. It makes no sense. Sense is that she emotionally moved from anger, then to panic, then to grief. So back at 5:07, when she began her search looking for John, she backed out of the garage, and what would happen next would change the entire course of this case. As she backed out of that garage, she hit John's Traverse and cracked her right rear taillight. Folks, the Commonwealth has one job to do in this courtroom. It's an immutable responsibility to provide you with the truth. That's it. Not to win the case, but to seek justice and to do it through the truth. Ask yourself, did you get that truth from the Commonwealth? The Commonwealth continually tried to tell you that that video showed that the SUV came close to John's Traverse, and it took us showing you the video to unequivocally establish that Karen hit that car and cracked her taillight at 5:07. You can almost hear an audible gasp in the courtroom when we finally showed you the actual video. You can see that tire move. I'm only going to show you one series of exhibits during my entire closing, but it's that important. And it's this. Look at the condition of her taillight when she pulls out of the driveway at 5:07. That
Oh, armchair. Correction again. I'm sorry. You're talking about when I was talking about a different time than you are, for correction. When Jen called John. So when Jen called John, as Karen was already, almost to John's house, right? That's what I'm talking about. Like, she knew that she was gone. She had to have known that there was something wrong with John in the house getting beat. And that's when she started her bullshit with the texts from 12:38 onward. Like, she started just saying, "Where are you? Are you here? Pull up behind," all that stuff. So she intentionally, in my opinion, did that to cover her ass, right? That's what I meant. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear.
taillight, and I'm going to choose my words very carefully here. That taillight is cracked, but it's not completely damaged. And if there was any question in your mind about the level of damage to that taillight at 5:07, all doubt was extinguished when Dighton Police Officer Barrows walked into this courtroom. He's a sworn officer. He's not associated with Canton. He's not associated with the Alberts. He's not associated with the McCabe's. He doesn't know Michael Proctor. In other words, he doesn't answer to any of these folks. He's an outsider and he's completely independent. And his words were the following, quote, "That taillight was not completely damaged. It was cracked. A piece was missing, but not completely damaged." take a look at this photograph and tell me, which one looks like Officer Barros' description? The one on the left or the one on the right? The reconstructed light on the left is what that light looked like before it was in Trooper Proctor's possession. Remember that. That's what it looked like before Trooper Proctor had access to the SUV. And you have an independent...
Damn you, Pooper Proctor. And that was after. Man, oh man. It's a big deal. You know, I feel like, okay, this is just my theory. I feel like, yes, he could have hit it with like anything, but I feel like, wouldn't it make sense to use one of those, the window breakers for like if you drive yourself off of a cliff and into a lake and you have those glass breakers so that you can get out? Like, wouldn't that be a tool that they use in Canton PD? Maybe. I think that's what he may have used. I don't know.
Police officer telling you so. You'll recall that after John's body was discovered, Lank, a very good friend of the Alberts, walked into Brian Albert's house and had an off-the-record meeting with him. No one's ever going to know exactly what that meeting was about, what they discussed, because that interview, like everything else in this case, it wasn't recorded. It wasn't memorialized. But we do know that shortly thereafter, the Canton Police Department was recused from the matter entirely. And the case was assigned to one Michael Proctor. You have to believe that when the Alberts found that out, they thought they hit the lottery. They thought they hit the lottery. What are the chances? The department where my brother works...
Ooh, the anger. Oh my
God.
He is hot about that one. He thought he was clear. He was good to go. Everything was fine. That is some anger. Look at those peepers, y'all. I'm telling you. He would be the worst poker player ever. Ever.
That department's been recused. That's tough luck. But the guy who catches the case is Michael Proctor, a guy we go back with for decades. At such a break, they probably thought, when this is over, we need to get that dude a gift. Oh, wait a minute. They didn't think that. They said it out loud. But still, you've got to imagine that the Alberts had to be stressed, what with that whole thing about a dead body being on their lawn. That might get some attention, and they had to be wondering, will he set up a crime scene? Is he going to come into the house? Is he going to search the house?
I am so glad that I was muted because I hollered. I forgot he said this. Let's back it up, back it up. The disrespect on that tongue of Jackson's is great. Let's go back just a wee bit.
Whole thing about a dead body being on their lawn. That might get some attention, and they had to be wondering, will he set up a crime scene? Is he going to come into the house? Is he going to search the house? Is he going to send in a forensics team? Is he going to interview witnesses? Is he going to take us to the station? Will he take our phones? Will he look at our communications? Will he look at our Google searches? Will he look at our early morning phone calls? Is he going to look in the basement? And Michael Proctor answered every single one of those questions resoundingly. Nope. He's a Boston cop too. And with that, Michael Proctor didn't draw a thin blue line. He erected a tall blue wall. A wall that you can't scale. A wall that Karen Reed certainly couldn't get over. A wall between us and them. A place you folks are not invited. We protect our own. It's us or it's them. And by the way, who's she after all? Nobody. An outsider. This is going to be easy. Or so they thought. Let's look at what...
Or so they thought. He's like, shut the fuck up, Jackson. You know too much. Armchair, yes. So do you know if the FBI is still investigating this case? I don't know, no. But if you remember, the FBI stated that they are investigating not only Morrissey's office, aka the investigation into John O'Keefe's murder, but the prosecution of Karen Read, which is Morrissey's office. So yeah, I think that right there, that statement confirms that they are investigating still, because they haven't finalized that prosecution of Karen Read. So yeah, I do. And I think that's what Hank Brennan came in for. I really do. Like, think about it. They have to act proper. Morrissey's office has to be pristine at this point because they are being scrutinized at every level. Then you have Beverly, Judge Bev, who just got promoted to second chair Chief Justice, because her boss is Chief Justice of the Criminal Procedure Committee or whatever the fuck. All right. She just got that. And in the article that was written, her, a fellow judge or somebody that used to know her or knows of her, whatever, said, yeah, this is great to see, because it's like saying, we as in attorneys got your back, Jack or Bev. Like, we got you, boo. But I think it's even more than that. I think that she gets to see, not only does she get to stay in the case, right? And her Chief Justice boss made sure of that by the motion that was filed recently. But she gets to see any dealings going on with the appeals process, I found out. I don't know if I put that on X yet, but she gets the inside scoop without getting penalized for it, because that's criminal procedure. That's part of her job. That's part of her jurisdiction. So she's in the know. Her hands are in every web you could weave in that courthouse and in that county. Bev has mastered her craft of being the slimy skis-ball she is, along with her friend Morrissey, who I think her mama and Morrissey's mama were friends. I think either whoever in that family. Beverly's mom worked at the school as a lunch lady, maybe, and the boss was either Morrissey's mom or whatever. I think Michael Dotz did an excellent video on that, but I just can't remember the details. But yeah, they're buddies. Bev and Morrissey, thick as thieves, Quincy, Massachusetts. So to answer your question long-windedly, yeah. Yep, I do. And then once, however this trial goes, hopefully it doesn't go anywhere. But if it does, let's just say the worst thing happens and she is found guilty, she's going to be out. She's going to be out. Because I think that's when they'll bring the hammer down. They just don't want her convicted. That's just me. All right.
Michael Proctor actually did and did not do in this case. One of the consistent issues that's come up throughout this trial is how evidence always seems to be changing and evolving when in Michael Proctor's hands or somebody in his orbit. If it happens once, let's chalk it up to a mistake. Twice, it's starting to look a little bit like incompetence. If that happens every single time, it becomes intentional, which means it becomes corruption. The defense spent some time, we spent some time discussing the tow time that Michael Proctor swore to in affidavits. There was a reason that we believed it was so important, and I want to talk about that for just a quick second. Because this was a concerted effort by Michael Proctor to falsify the time the car was seized, so that no one would know that he actually had possession of the car before the first pieces of taillight were ever discovered at the scene. But he got caught. And when he did, the best he could come up with was it was a typo. Like a dozen times, a typo. You'll remember what that testimony was. The truth is that car was in Michael Proctor's possession from about 4:12 in the afternoon. He said it was 4:16 when he finally had to tell the truth or some version of the truth. Those first pieces of taillight were not found until after 5:45 p.m. That is the very fact that Michael Proctor was trying to hide by those falsified affidavits, saying he didn't seize the car until two different sources. The evidence presented by was found on the lawn. Wouldn't you want to get the truth? Told Proctor's only manipulation of the investigation. What about Brian Loughran? You met him. Michael Proctor did his level best to not just hide evidence, but to hide human beings from you and from us. Michael Proctor was informed that the plow drivers were out that night.
Watch his face right here.
Potentially along 34 Fairview at the exact times in question. Even Michael Trotta expressly told Michael Proctor that 34 Fairview had in fact been plowed that morning, and by whom. Proctor not only did not interview Brian Loughran, he never disclosed his name in a single report. He hid him. This is a witness who was literally on 34 Fairview at the time in question where a body was found on the lawn. Wouldn't you want to get the truth from an eyewitness? Wouldn't you want to seek that out? Not if you're Michael Proctor, a close friend of the Alberts. If it were up to Proctor, you literally never would have heard of or from Brian Loughran. That's a scary prospect.
Absolutely is.
The additional physical evidence, or some additional physical evidence presented by the Commonwealth in this case. You'll recall Christina Hanley. She established to a scientific certainty that the glass on the bumper, which was told to you in opening statement, was going to have something to do with this case. The glass on the bumper was going to match that cocktail glass. She told you unequivocally the glass on the bumper did not match the cocktail glass. They came from two different sources. The glass on the bumper has nothing to do with the cocktail glass. So that glass on the bumper had to get there somehow. It didn't get there by being broken from the cocktail glass. See the point? It had to get on the bumper somehow. It didn't jump up there by itself. And what's really interesting is that
real quick, Peggy is just thinking, she thinks it's a joke. This one right here, I think, is probably the only one sitting in court on that side who's convinced, is being convinced of the truth and is struggling with it. Watch her. I'm just going to back it up a little, but watch her. Or she's falling asleep and I'm completely wrong. But watch.
It's going to have something to do with this case. The glass on the bumper was going to match that cocktail glass. She told you unequivocally the glass on the bumper did not match the cocktail glass. They came from two different sources. The glass on the bumper has nothing to do with the cocktail glass. So that glass on the bumper had to get there somehow. It didn't get there by being broken from the cocktail glass. See the point? It had to get on the bumper somehow. It didn't jump up there by itself. And what's really interesting is that there was one piece on the bumper, one, only one, that matched something else in the case. It was a perfect match to a piece of glass that was supposedly found at the scene. Who do you think had possession of that matching glass? Michael Proctor. So the glass on the bumper had to be placed there, and the only person who had anything...
Oh, he's like, for the love of Christ, you keep nailing this, Jackson. Quit it. But you ain't, because you're a no-quit kind of guy. He nailed it. Look how pissed he is. He's ready to throw hands. And Miss Peggy's like, bunch of malarkey, bunch of hogwash, bunch of losers. Yeah, it did look like it stung. He's pissed.
Close to matching the pieces that had to be placed there is Michael Proctor. You do the math. That leads us to the magic hair. The Commonwealth spent a lot of time bringing in experts about mitochondrial DNA and maternal DNA lines and comparative analyses, and all that sounds really great and really sciencey, except for the fact that it just doesn't matter. Why? Because you would have to believe that that little hair, tiny, tiny little hair, barely perched on the side of that SUV survived nearly 75 miles.
Not a turtle hair.
Blizzard outside. That would be a magic hair indeed. That magic hair means nothing. The DNA means nothing, and that's because the hair was from somewhere else. It certainly was not from a motor vehicle incident at 34 Fairview on January 29th. That hair was placed there. The DNA on the outside of the taillight housing also married.
So where did it come from? I mean, that's some sick shit, Proctor. If you plucked a hair off of that poor man's, dead man's head, or did you get it from within the house that he walked into that early morning, just after midnight? So where'd you get the hair? Did you get it from the clothes that was in the bag in the back of your SUV? Procta? Like, where'd you get it? We'll never know, but I'm curious. Very curious.
Merits very little discussion. John's DNA would be expected to be found all over that SUV, inside, outside, the exterior, the interior, everything he touched would have had his DNA on.
And Jackson just said it, like, it could be because it was in her car. Of course it would be. Why wouldn't it not be? But I got to go the extra mile. Did you get it from Albert's when the floor was ripped up? I don't know.
Here's what's actually important about that DNA. No DNA was found on the interior of that taillight. The taillight that they now claim crashed into his arm and shattered. No blood was found anywhere on that taillight or any taillight pieces. And no tissue was found anywhere on that taillight or any taillight pieces. But we're to believe that that taillight literally exploded on John's arm at 25 miles an hour with 1,000 pounds of pressure. We talked about the evidence doing very funny things when in Proctor's possession or the possession of somebody in his orbit. Now think about the videos that you saw. How many videos appear to be somehow manipulated or altered? Just about every single one of them. Look at the video of the Sally Port. Let's take that one, for example, that grainy one. It's missing the exact time that would show the condition of the taillight when it was pulled in to the Sally Port. Pretty important time, wouldn't you think? Did someone not want you to see what the condition of the taillight was at that exact time? But the good news is there's a second video. It's much clearer. And it's from the same time frame.
Ooh.
We didn't get that.
Chill out, Mr. Albert. Chill. The handcuffs aren't coming yet. At this point, chill. I wonder if he's more upset at their incompetence to cover up his third-party culprit ass. Like, I think he's more upset that these jackals didn't do better for his behalf. Maybe that's it. Can't be mad at Karen or Jackson. Jackson didn't do that. Your boys did. Your boy Procta and Kevin Albert, your brother. I mean, they're the ones that failed. Berkey didn't help you. Can't help it that they're incompetent.
For about 2.5 years.
They're your friends.
Literally, it was after the trial started that one was turned over. And this is important. The Commonwealth introduced you to a person by the name of Yuri Buchanan. They presented video showing what was clearly the right side of the car. They asked questions about the right side of the car. You'll recall, Mr. Lally asked Sergeant Buchanan, did you or Trooper Proctor ever go at, or near the right side of that taillight? And while he was asking the question, what appeared to be the right side of the car was looking at you. The video was still up. Buchanan paused, turned earnestly into the microphone, stared at you and said, never. We never went anywhere around that taillight. While he was showing you the right side of the car. And that trick might have worked until we got up to cross-examine him. And only then, on the second day of his testimony, did he have to admit that the video was actually inverted. It was backward. And it was cleverly inverted at that.
You know, I take offense as a Southerner that they call us rednecks. Because our necks do not get near as red as the white men in Massachusetts when they're upset. I'm just saying. Don't come at me. It's the truth, though. Is it the weather? Is it the climate? I think so. Hey, J. Marie. Good to see you, love.
Timestamp had the proper orientation, which means that timestamp had to be removed, the video inverted, and the timestamp placed back on it. Which means that was done intentionally. That was not a mistake. And when caught in that obvious fabrication, Buchanan doubled down and said, it's exactly the same. You remember that back and forth. It's exactly the same, he said, as if we're stupid. Is it exactly the same, or is it exactly opposite? Ladies and gentlemen, you were lied to. There is no other way to say it. It's inexcusable. It's abhorrent. But it's also a paradigm of everything that the investigators have been willing to do in this case. Lie, obfuscate, manipulate, alter. And when they're caught, they just excuse it away. Doesn't matter. It's the same thing. What's the big deal? Just look the other way. And don't forget, Buchanan is Proctor's supervisor, and he was in that little group chat where Karen Reed's naked photos were being searched for. You know,
Mr. Jackson, did you learn that from the internet? You can't believe everything you see on the internet, okay?
the saying about the apple falling from the tree. Ladies and gentlemen, we haven't even started talking about the taillight yet. You'll recall that at the very beginning of this case, you were introduced to no fewer than 5 CPD officers very early on who searched the scene. None of them, not a single one, found any taillight material at the scene. 0. Stephen Seraph, Sean Good, Stephen Mulaney, Michael Lank, Paul Gallagher, they were all there. They were all walking right around there. They were all looking. They were searching with their eyes. They were searching with their hands. Some said they were searching with their feet. They even used tools, a leaf blower. Not one piece of bright red taillight material was at the scene, not a single piece, but incredibly, over the course of the next 3 weeks, according to Michael Proctor, 47 pieces of taillight material would end up being found, some of which were the size of a salad plate.
Dang. A salad plate. And you missed that. With a leaf blower? Shame.
The CERT team shows up later on January 29th, and according to O'Hara, the first few pieces of taillight were found about 5:45. And here's some interesting testimony that you heard. Who else was there? Who did O'Hara say was there? Well, he said his team was there. We certainly expected that, but then he said there were others. These other mysterious figures, some from Canton PD, some from the Massachusetts State Police, that he could not account for. Heavy coats, big masks, hats. Even Lieutenant O'Hara could not tell who was who, but he did note Canton police officers were there who were unaccounted for. Massachusetts State troopers were there unaccounted for. And during that search that was overseen by Trooper Tully, Proctor's supervisor, 3 pieces of taillight material were found. That's super important, and I want to concentrate on that for a second. O'Hara said all 3 pieces were in an area about 12.
Enough already with the taillights. You can see it. Even Carrie's like, I don't even follow anything on a daily basis, but I don't want to hear the taillight business.
12 inches square. That's an area about as big as your dinner plate. Tully, however, claimed that 1 red piece was found. About 3 feet away from that was a shoe. About 1 to 2 feet from that was a clear piece of plastic, and a few feet away from that was a red piece of plastic. So we have red, clear, and red over the span of about, added up, probably 10 or 12 feet. Ladies and gentlemen, both of those things cannot be true. Somebody is taking liberties with the facts. Then Lieutenant Tully comes to court and makes this big grand gesture of opening all these evidence bags. These 2 evidence bags in particular represent exactly what we're talking about, those 3 pieces, red, clear, red. They're marked, they're sealed.
Now, real quick, while I have it on my brain, I'm going to wrap it up in like 5 minutes. So I might do it on double speed. Just going to have to really pay attention to Brian's face. But Peggy and Paul Sr., John O'Keefe's father, Sr., he and Peggy went to go visit the scene on Monday, that following Monday. And there's footage out there of them walking just their shoes or their legs. Why didn't they see any of the taillight that was discovered later a few different times? Like, I think it was 2 or 3 additional searches. Why didn't Peggy and John Sr. see those taillight pieces? it's something to consider. Why was that? Why he was sequestered as a witness, or tried to anyway, by the defense? That's what I think. But they didn't want to do it. Bev didn't want that to happen.
They look official. They're not Stop and Shop bags, thank God. At least they've moved up from that. They've even got evidence tape on them. Who knew? There's evidence tape around here. So this must be real evidence, right? It must be real evidence in this case. And after making that big theatrical display, he opens up the bag with the red pieces and he pulls 2 pieces out. That's okay. Put the 2 red pieces together. Good so far. Then he opens up the second bag under Mr. Lowley's questioning. And you remember he hesitated just a second. Opened that bag and pulled out 1 piece of clear plastic. Then pulled out a second piece of clear plastic with no explanation as to how that could have possibly happened. And he quickly returned all 4 of those back into the bag, sealed them up, and we're done for the day. The next.
Now that was, I did not realize he said that. I guess I probably zoned out because I'm already starting to, because it's already been so long. But let's back that up, because he's regurgitating his own experience, Alan Jackson, right, with Lowley. Let's listen to that again.
Display. He opens up the bag with the red pieces and he pulls 2 pieces out. That's okay. Put the 2 red pieces together. Good so far. Then he opens up the second bag under Mr. Lowley's questioning, and you remember he hesitated.
Talking about Proctor.
Opened that bag and pulled out 1 piece of clear plastic, then pulled out a second piece of clear plastic with no explanation as to how that could have possibly happened.
Okay, my bad.
He quickly returned all 4 of those back into the bag, sealed them up, and we're done for the day. The next day, I asked about that evidence again. I asked him to open up that bag with the red pieces, and he did the same thing. Pulled out 2 red pieces of plastic. I said, you'll recall this, I said, look deeper, look closer, sir. Pull everything out of that bag. Would he have had I not suggested it? And then he pulled a 3rd piece of red plastic out of the bag. So miraculously, Trooper Tully's 3 pieces of plastic became 5 pieces of plastic right before your eyes.
It's magic.
Ladies and gentlemen, the forces at play that multiplied those pieces of plastic inside those evidence bags are the same forces at play that multiplied the pieces of plastic at 34 Fairview. Think about that. Let that sink in for a second. How easy is it? Not sloppiness. That's evidence manipulation. That's how, over the course of 3 weeks, those pieces of plastic go from 0 to 3 to 5 to 47, ever increasing in size with every single search. Now, knowing all that, ask yourself the looming question: who had access to that taillight, the cracked taillight? Who was it? Go back and watch the Sally Port video. I'll give you the timestamp, 5:37, and see it for yourself. We know that Trooper Proctor, with binder in hand, walked by himself. Once we corrected the video from being inverted, you can see that he walked back by himself to the right rear taillight where nobody could see what he was doing. Higgins' own key swipes put him in the Sally Port that same afternoon and evening. And then the Sally Port video magically skips, and Chief Berkowitz appears right next to Proctor at the back of that vehicle in the same spot, and they walk out of the Sally Port together. Where were they going? Remember O'Hara? Unidentified troopers and Canton cops were at the search at 34 Fairview. How hard is it to drop a piece of plastic? We spent a long time talking about the compromised and altered and tampered and manipulated evidence, but now I want to switch and talk a little bit about the true facts in this case, because you did hear some true evidence and true facts. The Commonwealth presented about 67, maybe more, witnesses, and expended 30-plus days of trial and 9 weeks of your life. Maybe we're in the 10th week. For what? It should be relatively simple, right? The Commonwealth claims that Karen Reed pulled up to 34 Fairview, John got out of the car, she reversed into him and hit him, and then she drove home. That's 4 facts. It's just 4 facts. That's all it is. What evidence do they actually have to prove that that SUV ever hit John? The answer is none. They don't have any. There's no evidence whatsoever that Karen Reed's vehicle ever struck John O'Keefe, or that Karen Reed ever wanted to strike John O'Keefe. In fact, every single piece of material evidence in this case unequivocally proves the opposite. John went into that house. That SUV was not damaged by hitting John, and John's injuries did not come from being hit by a car. That's what the evidence actually shows. The Commonwealth...
Bang, bang. That's all I can think right now. Playing in his head. I will fuck you up. I will beat your ass. Pull up.
Knows that, and they've known it for a long time, and Proctor knows that. And because of that, the Commonwealth just resorts to character assassination and talking for weeks on end about the snow. Let's talk about what the real evidence actually shows, the unassailable science. Let's talk about the truth. Concerning John's injuries first, the Commonwealth's own medical examiner, Dr. Scortibello, could not conclude that John was hit by a car. Think about that. And she would not even say that it was a homicide. She told you without any dispute in this case, quote, evidence pointing toward one manner of death is no more compelling than evidence of a competing manner of death, end quote. Her words, not mine. She went on to say it's just as likely that he was punched and fell backward. His injuries are consistent with that. In fact, in her expert opinion, his injuries are consistent with a physical altercation, as she testified, but they are not, in her words, not classical injuries from an auto pedestrian accident. That by itself is reasonable doubt. But the evidence and the truth goes far further. We introduced you to not one, but two thoroughly credentialed medical examiners, or medical experts, Dr. Sheridan and Dr. Russell, both of whom said John's arm injury is consistent with an animal attack. He's under his belt, decades of experience as the chief medical examiner who's triple credentialed in anatomical, forensic, and neuropathology. He told you that John's injuries are inconsistent with a motor vehicle accident or incident. They're consistent, however, with a physical altercation. In layman's terms, the science proves John was beaten. That also is reasonable doubt and should end this case.
Look at those
The facts
eyes
and evidence
darting.
don't stop there.
God.
Two of the most highly educated and highly qualified engineers you'll ever meet, Dr. Dan Wolf and Dr. Andrew Rentschler, mechanical engineer and a biomechanist. They reviewed this case. They did testing, they did analysis, they evaluated the case scientifically. They were not hired by the defense, not by the Commonwealth. They're completely 100% independent of any party in this case. And they were equally available, by the way, to the Commonwealth. They could have called them.
That's so important. If there's a retrial, please harp on that. Especially if Bev is not going to allow the whole federal investigation being mentioned like she did last time, or barred it from being mentioned, which is bullshit because it is a fact. It's a fact. And I would I would appeal her denial on that and go to the appellate court just to have it on the record, just to have it. Like, everybody that says that should not be mentioned should be held accountable one day, because that's bullshit.
They explained that John's injuries were not caused by being hit by Miss Reed's SUV, and that the SUV was not damaged by coming in contact with John O'Keefe's body. That should end the inquiry right there. Both sides of the equation. From a physics, engineering, and biomechanical standpoint, they established that John O'Keefe was not struck by Karen Reed's vehicle, period. And that is yet another fact that establishes reasonable doubt and should put an end to this case. So instead of calling the ARCA experts, which they had available to them, the Commonwealth chose to introduce you to Trooper Joe Paul. You'll remember his testimony. I think I'm being kind when I say
system.
that Trooper Paul's analysis lacked credibility. Trooper
It just
Paul lacks the
was.
experience, the education, the training, the background, and the knowledge to not only render opinions on these issues, but to even understand the issues themselves. He makes the absurd claim that John was hit on the elbow area of his arm by a taillight. He was spun to the left in a pirouette. His arm stayed on the light long enough for the shards of plastic to explode around him, scratching his arm even though he was wearing long sleeves, then projecting him 30 feet to the left, but not before making a stop to hit his head on either the curb or the pavement, before coming to his final resting place with his unbroken phone tucked neatly under his body. It's nonsensical. It borders on laughable. Compare that testimony to...
And I have to make fun of, I'm not trying to make fun or make light of John O'Keefe's demise, but Jesus, like, what else can you do? It's so uncomfortable and so blatantly obvious that Karen Reed nor Alexis kill John. You have to, and the theories with Joe Paul, damn, like what else could you do but just get out your frustration with humor? So I apologize. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but they're disrespectful for trying to think that they could get away with this shit. It doesn't make any sense. But look at that face. Ooh, I'm going to have to screenshot this one because this is probably pure, unfiltered rage. Ooh-wee, baby. That's the money shot. So I'm going to save that. That's rage.
And Dr. Dan Wolf and Dr. Andrew Rinchler. Both PhDs in engineering, both top of their field in accident reconstruction, both published peer-review articles on the issues. Both men are highly sought after by the likes of national sports leagues and the United States Department of Defense. And these men are unrivaled in accident reconstruction. What did Dr. Rinchler say before he left the stand? This was even under cross-examination. He said that the physics and the science don't lie. His words were, "You can't deny the science and the physics." John wasn't hit by that car, period. The Commonwealth cannot explain John O'Keefe's injuries. They can't explain his head wound. How did he get the head wound if he landed on snow-covered grass and dirt? And by the way, before Mr. Lally gets up and says it, because I know he's going to, there is
And he does.
zero evidence before you, zero, that cold grass and dirt turns into ice or turns into concrete. Zero. They can't explain the injury above his right eye, that laceration. They can't explain his nose. They haven't even tried to. They can't explain the injury to his tongue, the laceration on his tongue. They cannot explain the injuries to the back of his hands, the bruises, and certainly they cannot explain the injuries to his right arm. But maybe most importantly, they cannot and haven't even tried to explain the lack of injuries on John's body from the neck down. Nothing. He was pristine. Not a bump, not a bruise, not a fracture, not a broken bone. Nothing to suggest that he was hit by a 7,000-pound SUV going 25 miles per hour.
He's scanning the jury because he knows.
And what of that right arm? According to the Commonwealth's best and brightest, Trooper Paul, John absorbed the entirety of the collision, the whole collision, with that 3.5-ton SUV entirely with his right arm, launching him some 30 feet. But amazingly, the arm suffered no break, no fracture, and didn't even get a bruise. So how are those injuries properly explained? The evidence is simple. John got into an altercation. He was punched. He tried to defend himself by putting his hands up. He may have even scratched his own nose by putting his hands in front of his face to defend himself. His hands were bruised in the covering up.
5 minutes, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Bitch.
As he continued,
Yes, I said it. I know that you're supposed to warn, but this was his finality, and you fucked it up, Bev. She could have waited.
he got hit, punch went through, and he fell to the ground, fracturing his skull. At some point during that altercation, the dog got a hold of him, and the dog was pulled away. Every single injury is answered. Every single injury is explained by that. Ladies and gentlemen,
Wow.
given what we know about the facts and the physical evidence in this case, the actual truth in this case, how did this happen? How did we end up here? We ended up here because of relationships, insider trading, playing the who you know game, and building a tall blue wall, which takes decades and generations. But the real question is it going to continue? Will this festering malignancy that allows a lead detective and his supervisor to gloat and sneer while looking over naked pictures or looking for naked pictures of the woman that they've targeted, will that continue? And the answer should be, not if you have anything to say about it. Michael Proctor is the lead investigator in this case, and much as the Commonwealth might try, they cannot distance themselves from the stench of him on this case and this investigation. Those secret group chats, illustrate the quality and character of his investigation. Remind yourself how an, quote, unbiased and an objective investigator, someone who's supposed to be looking for facts. Ask yourself, how did he approach his job? Late at night, sitting there in his office, deviously looking for naked pictures of Karen Read and talking about her like she's a piece of meat. Talking about her bodily functions, her medical conditions, calling her vile names. I don't even have it in me to repeat what he said about her. He reduced her to an object, and he went further by insulting her. He went further than insulting her, and he dehumanized her. And when he was done betraying that very humanity, he wished for her to commit suicide. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you frame someone. That's how you dehumanize someone so viciously that you can just pin it on the girl and cover for the homeowner because he's a Boston cop. That's how you rip a person's life apart and sleep like a baby while doing it. And then further that by saying, I hope she kills herself. Ladies and gentlemen, I just began the discussion this afternoon or this morning with a quote about the truth, and I did that because that's what this case is about. Top to bottom, tip to tail, it's about the truth. Not hiding it or concealing it, but exposing the truth. The truth is immutable. It's not a feeling, it's not a whim. It's unflinching, it's unchanging, and it's everlasting. That's why the law is steady. That's why it's not captive to the whims of people drunk with power who think they're above the law, who think they're above scrutiny. That's why you stand as the guardian of justice and the protector of justice. The law demands the very integrity that Trooper Proctor and his investigation lacks, and it requires that you cannot convict Karen Read unless the Commonwealth has met its incredibly high burden to prove every element beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And a moral certainty is defined as the highest degree of certainty possible in matters related to human affairs. It's the highest degree possible in your life. That's the level of certainty. And I'll leave you with this. You have the most powerful tool known to American jurisprudence because you have your vote. No one can take that away from you. Not me, not the Commonwealth, not the court. You may not have asked to be here, but each of you have given something very special of yourselves. You've agreed to do that which is the highest calling a citizen can answer in any way. You've agreed to give your community your best. And my question to you is, what will you do with this moment? Ignore the lies and the manipulations, the misogyny, the bias, the lack of evidence? Could you ever do that? Would you ever do that? Or will you say with your verdict, I see the truth, and I will not ever look the other way? When you stare the truth down, you'll see that the Commonwealth has not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt into a moral certainty, not even close. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen Read is innocent.
Is innocent.
Do justice.
Yes.
And find her not guilty.
Not guilty.
All right. Thank you very much,
Beverly.
Mr. Jackson.
Well, let's finish strong with
All right, Mr. Lally.
Jennifer bitch-ass McCabe. Oh, Brian, that was good. I'm worried. Do you think that they were convinced that I didn't do the Google search that I did? No, bitch. We all know. We know that you know that we know as well. Guys, thank you so much for sticking this hour and 45 minutes with me going over Brian Albert and his reaction and inability to sit still during the closing argument, which I feel could be, tuned up a bit for the next time if it happens. But it was damn good for an hour. And it obviously triggered Brian Albert into some kind of tizzy in his head that spilled out into his face and hands. And maybe there's some truth there to the points that we brought up, that we went over, especially Chloe being brought up, Higgy and the fight, and putting John O'Keefe's body out in the lawn with the Ford Edge. That definitely riled him up, amongst others. So Thank you again for being here. Hit the like button on your way out. If you're watching the replay, please hit the like and share. And I appreciate you guys so much. Have a wonderful evening. Justice for John O'Keefe and free Karen Reed and free Turtle Boy. Bye, guys. Thank you.